Are you tired of your supervisor complaining? Are you tired from them taking absolutely ages to reply to your email or give you some feedback? Then why not try our... I'm joking. Welcome to a new video on Research 101. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another episode of Research 101. Today we're going to be talking about how you can get the best out of your supervisor if you are doing research, whether it's a master's or a PhD. Now before I go any further, don't forget to subscribe if you can, and do click the post notification bell so don't miss out on future Research 101 videos and Tech Tuesday that I have on a Tuesday, and kind of challenges and book reviews that I try to do on a Thursday on this channel. So if you don't want to miss out, do click that post notification bell if you can. So back to the video at hand. Now thankfully I've been a PhD student, and as of about a year now I've been a supervisor. So having seen both sides of the picture, I thought why not share some tips that you all can use to try and squeeze and get the most out of your supervisor, because sometimes we get frustrated about, we want to excel but our supervisor may not be doing this, or we have difficult conversations, or they're too intense, or they are too relaxed. So depending on that, how can I get the most out of my PhD? Because my supervisor is integral to that. So I thought why not share some of those tips here in this video. So before I go into the kind of tips and tricks that you can use to squeeze the most out of your supervisor, there's a few things we need to kind of address first so we understand what a supervisor is and the role they actually play in our research. Now the first thing is a supervisor is not a manager, and what I mean by that is that a supervisor's role is to do what it says, to supervise you, to mold you, to guide you, to nurture you and develop you, where you are the figurehead, you are the driver, and they would advise you on what to do and what not to do, advise you on what you can do later on, what you forgot to do, but they're not there to manage you, not there to micromanage you, tell you to get out of bed and do this experiment, do that experiment. In the first year, you're taught a lot of things, so maybe there's an element of managerial stuff to a very slight degree. But throughout your entire research, it's about them molding you. And what I mean by that is a lot of the action and drive comes from you. You're the student, you're steering the boat, they're just helping to guide you to get to your destination. And I think sometimes we get into the notion of they're supposed to give us a lot more, but we're not doing what we're supposed to do to get it out of them. And that's why this video is going to be really key, is to see what can you do to get the most from your supervisor, because they're not there to constantly check on you, make sure you're in the lab doing this or you're transcribing interviews. That's the independence that comes from you. Because the last thing I want to mention on this bit is that when you're doing a PhD, for example, you're essentially learning how to research independently. So if they were your manager, you wouldn't be able to research independently because you'd be dependent on what they're doing or what they're telling you to do, etc. So keep that in mind, that supervisor is not a manager. There should not be a concept of micromanagement, because if it is, then that's a poor reflection on your so-called supervisor. Another thing is knowing your supervisor's style. Now, thankfully, when I did my PhD, I got to see many other PhD students doing research, and they had different supervisors. Now, sometimes supervisors can be very intense. They're in the laboratory every day, or they're in the office every day checking and thinking of ideas, saying to, why don't we look at this, why don't we look at that? We also get supervisors who don't even come into the lab once in your entire PhD and very relaxed and very passive. So the best way to squeeze what you want out of your supervisor depends on you understanding their style, because there are different tips and tricks that cater for the different type of supervisor you may have. So first of all, address and understand, how does your supervisor come across? Are they constantly replying on emails, or do they have a lot of conversations in person? And depending on that, you would have to dictate, right, I have to use this strategy or use this strategy to try and squeeze out more and to put my foot down to make sure I'm getting the most out of them, because they are there to help you, essentially. So now, going through the tips and tricks of what you can do, irrespective of what style your supervisor may be. The first, which is universal, is making sure you have a thread of evidence of everything that you do. Now, say for example, your supervisor is very intense, they're having a lot of conversations in person, and a lot of those ideas get missed. Make sure you type that up, you summarize it, and send them in an email, so that here's what we discussed yesterday, are you happy with that, is this accurate? Because when it comes to problems which I see many PhD students have, they don't have a chain of evidence to confirm what happened or what didn't happen. And I know a lot of supervisors, I doubt many supervisors watch my YouTube channel, but there's many supervisors who actually don't reply to an email because they don't want to be tied to something that they wish wasn't recorded. And that's why a lot of them actually have conversations in person, because it doesn't get recorded, doesn't get, kind of documented. So keep a thread of evidence of everything that you do. So what I mean by that is every meeting, every bit of discussion you've had, write it up and then send an email and make sure they, by their duty, are supposed to reply to you, say, yep, that's what we discussed. Hopefully all things go well. And make a habit of doing that constantly. And they can't say, why are you doing this? No, you say that from your student, this is my right and my duty to make sure I'm documenting everything. So there's evidence to make sure that we don't forget or we don't lose what we discussed. But within that, it's making sure you cover your back. Now, sometimes some supervisors and some universities actually have a system in place where both parties, student and supervisor, have to have kind of a meeting report to discuss what's happening. But sometimes that gets, skipped onto the carpet, that gets, kind of moved away and doesn't get that importance that it should. So whether you have a relaxed supervisor or an intense supervisor, having a thread of evidence, even if you have a phone conversation, make sure you type it up, it's written out, and send an email. And make sure they reply or they have to reply. Because believe me, the last thing I want to mention on this is when it comes towards the end of your PhD and things may not have gone well, hopefully it has, these thread of evidences will back you up when you have to defend why this didn't go well or why that didn't go well or why your supervisor is causing you a problem. You gotta have evidence. Now, number 2 is about the notion of don't just nod, ask. And what I mean by this is that when you're in a meeting, don't just sit there and say, right, yep, I understand what you, yep, that's fine. Yeah, I agree with what you mentioned, yep. Ask. And what I mean by asking, you've seen me talk about it across my YouTube channel and Instagram page, why and how. Ask them questions. They are there to help you, so the only way they're going to help you is that if they know how to. And the only way they're going to know how to is that if you ask them questions. So every time you have a meeting, ask them, why did you tell me to look into this? Why do you believe that's a good idea? How am I going to do this? How would you suggest I look into this? Ask them questions. Don't just say that, hey, I need your help. Come in with a plan, and then when they start to decide, okay, this data isn't great, that data is good, probe them, ask them why and how questions based on that. So within this kind of number 2 tip, the notion of asking is constant, but that also is important based on if they're telling you something, or if you're going into the meeting giving data, and then they're giving you feedback. Each scenario, the notion of asking still remains the same. Because let's put these 2 scenarios in. You may come into, you've got a meeting to discuss some future work, and they're telling you, right, we need to get this done, that done, that done. Ask them why and how questions on this. Why are we looking into this? How do you propose we do this? How are we going to get that done? Why shouldn't we do this or that? That's that scenario. Again, another meeting, you come in and you're showing some data. They then give you feedback on the data that you're given. Ask them why and how questions on what they've said. Put the ball back into their court, so then they start to give you more help and advice because you're probing them. If you say, why don't we look into this? They'll say, like, go Google it. Okay, go Google it, come back, ask some questions. Bombard them with questions because it is their job, and looking at me, it's my role to help my PhD student. And the notion dynamic should be that supervisors got to keep up with a PhD student. But their drive and their passion should be so much so that supervisors keeping up to help them, to support them. And a key part of this, which I did in my PhD, which I'm telling many people on YouTube and social media, is ask your supervisors questions 24/7. Right? Put a list of questions, email it to them. When you meet them, have a list of questions ready in your lab book or in your notebook. Whatever it may be, don't just say yes to whatever they say. Probe them to why and how. They are the experts. They should know why and how. Right? Keep that in mind. Why and how questions all the time. And one of the reasons why I'm saying this as well is that I watch motivational speakers sometimes on YouTube, and Les Brown is quite a famous one, and I think this is the correct story, so I'll put in the description if I've got it wrong, but it's when he was talking about one of his first jobs that he got. He was struggling to find work, but he kept on showing up. He kept on asking the manager at the time, do you have any vacancies this week or today, etc. He kept on going, so much so the manager got frustrated and replied once, go get me coffee. And that was kind of a signal to say, I'll see you tomorrow, you can start work or something. Because he kept on asking. He did it in a polite way. Wasn't rude. He wasn't causing an inconvenience. He just kept on showing up. And I think that's also a useful way to look at your supervisors. Keep showing up. Keep asking questions, and even if they're not emailed you back, etc., be polite, give them space. But the moment you get an opportunity, don't just say no. Yeah, that's fine. Ask them a whole bunch of questions, because that is the best way to learn. Is to ask questions from your supervisors. And now number 3 is don't wait for work. Now I mentioned right at the start that they're there to supervise you, so a lot of the ideas and stuff should come from you. And even if 99% of them are really awful ideas, that's fine, because your supervisor will mold you to say that actually you don't need to do that. That's probably not a great experiment. That's not a good interview strategy. Let's look at this. And over time, you start getting better at thinking about ideas. But it has to come from you. And this third tip is that you don't want your supervisors to come and tell you now what to do. Say, right, we should look into this, we should look into that. A lot of the ideas should come from you. And be proactive, not reactive. You know, I mentioned in the previous video about seeking forgiveness and not seeking permission. And this also applies here, a quote that Ali Abdal mentioned from a book, that go out and try something. And if it goes wrong, you still learn something. So if it's a new study design, or if it's a new experiment, or if it's a new assay you're doing in the lab, you know, and it's already there, propose it to your supervisors. Don't wait for work for them, ask them. I've done this work, I'm looking to do this or that. Again, linked into topic number 2 about asking questions. Ask them, shall we just have a go at this or that? Let's see if it's actually useful. Let's see if it works. And that way you're constantly have no time to waste. You're not sitting idly thinking, right, I have nothing to do. You should always have work to do, and more importantly, use it as kind of a measurement scale to say, if my supervisor is telling me, right, we should do this or that, and I've done all the work, that means I'm not being proactive enough in my PhD. Because something I forgot to mention earlier is, it is your PhD. It's governed by you and should be molded and guided and nurtured and helped upon and advised upon by supervisors to help you get in the right kind of direction towards your Viva. But it has to come from you. And the 2 things that, like I mentioned just now, asking questions all the time and making sure you think of new work to do. Because you'll have 1,000 ideas and so many different side projects, and the supervisor will knock these down to get to the right one that's really beneficial for you and for the PhD. So have it in the habit of thinking, what other work can I do? What other work can I do? And don't say, don't go to your supervisor and say, right, what should we do? No, give them an idea, give them a plan, and say, all right, supervisor, I thought of this, and that's linking to the other work that we did. I want to look into doing that. Is that okay? Would you advise me to do it this way or that way? Have that kind of dynamic where you want to do something and you're just letting them know, you know. And sometimes even when I did it, I tried a few things, didn't cost too much money, didn't go out of my way, and I showed them the data already, and I was like, oh, actually, yeah, we could look into that further. You know, and that's that notion of being really, really proactive. So those are some useful kind of strategies you can use, whether your supervisor is very intense or relaxed. And I purposely chose these 3 for this video because I know the variety of styles supervisors are. So I wanted to make sure this is a video that anybody could benefit from, whether your supervisors are kind of right in your face all the time, constantly emailing and checking, or whether your supervisor is very barren and, you know, not even in the university or never seeing you. These are 3 ways that you can still get the most out of your supervisor. Because one thing I want to stress is that many of you might have a really good bond with your supervisor. Sometimes it's a lifetime bond that people who are professors still have chats with the supervisor. But in any case, it's still a professional kind of dynamic, and it can sometimes be a chess game that you get overrun, or you get, you know, become a kind of an assistant and they forget that you're a student, which they're supposed to guide you and develop you. You want to make sure you're covering your back and you're getting the most out of them. And then everything else can be a bonus, you know, going for lunch with the supervisor, having coffee, or helping them. But making sure you get what you want first is paramount, because at the end of the day, you're here to get your PhD. That's your priority. You know, and many of them, when they have this kind of respect put in place, the dynamic flourishes. And a lot of the times, again, I'm not saying that it's all the student side, because supervisors are not perfect, and sometimes they can, you know, slip and they get into kind of the managerial or start to vent at you from other things that they're dealing with, because, you know, you're their student sometimes and it has a very poor kind of relationship at times. So be forgiving in that case, because they're not perfect, but making sure you cover your back is paramount. Because you don't want to get towards the end of your PhD having missed out on this, because of things that you didn't put your foot down, or you didn't have a set of evidence, or you didn't ask them questions at the time, so then you can optimize that experiment. You see that all of these 3 tips are very interchangeable and they work hand in hand. So you can optimize your experience whilst you're doing a PhD and get the most out of your supervisor. So I hope those 3 tips were useful. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, do like and comment down which tip you preferred or what experiences you've gained from this video. It'd be really helpful for me and the channel. Don't forget to subscribe if you can, and click that post notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. And if you want to follow me on Instagram at Aamir.phd to find out kind of more smaller content related to research, well, you can be found on there. And if you want to email me kind of more in-depth queries, Aamir@researchtribe.org is where you can find me. But in any case, I shall see you in the next one. Take care.